Okay, so we got to talk about what is going on with the XFL right now, right? It has been ridiculous. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. And it's a shame. You know, the XFL obviously didn't end up lasting an entire season, but by no fault of their own, it definitely looked best positioned out of all the spring football leagues out there, best positioned to succeed. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm not a sports administrator or anything like that, but it definitely checked all of the blocks for a spring football league that would be successful. I mean, you look at attendance numbers, certainly in Seattle and St. Louis. I thought that putting a team in St. Louis was one of the XFL's best ideas. I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit biased, right? Being originally from St. Louis myself, I thought that that was awesome. But just having a team in a non-NFL market was really, I'm surprised they didn't do it with other teams. I'm surprised that St. Louis was the only non-NFL market that they targeted. But anyway, I mean, aside from that, you look at attendance, and like I said, in cities like Seattle, St. Louis, that was through the roof. In those cities, the merchandise sales were definitely doing well, and TV viewership was very respectable. I mean, even, like I said, as an example, in St. Louis, they were drawing better numbers than the St. Louis Cardinals and the St. Louis Blues. And anybody that knows anything about St. Louis sports knows that the Cardinals and Blues are kings in St. Louis. So to be able to outdraw them is a huge accomplishment as far as TV ratings is concerned. And it does look like the XFL may not be dead after all, like a lot of people thought. But more on that in a little bit. I do want to talk about what is going on with the lawsuit right now between one Oliver Luck, the now former XFL commissioner, and Vince McMahon. It has been just crazy. I mean, as everybody knows, Oliver Luck was terminated along with everybody else in the league when the season, shortly after the season shut down in March and April. That's when they let everybody know that they were being terminated. Jeffrey Pollock reached out to everyone, and shortly thereafter, not a couple weeks after they let everybody go in April, Oliver Luck ends up filing a lawsuit against Vince McMahon, saying that, you know, it was wrongful termination and that it was a weak and pretextual attempt to avoid the lawful contract obligations. Oliver Luck, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember 100% here, but he had a guaranteed contract with the XFL via Vince McMahon for, I believe it was 5 years, $5 million a year with a $2 million bonus. Guaranteed to him, but he ended up getting fired along with everybody else in the league, minus like a small skeleton crew. I know Jeffrey Pollock is still there, the XFL president, and a few other folks that I'm not 100% sure of. And so he ends up filing a lawsuit against Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon's attorneys end up firing back. They ended up providing the letter of termination, which did state the reasons that he was let go. The first of all being gross neglect of the job once the coronavirus pandemic began. And according to McMahon, Luck was, quote, effectively abandoning his responsibilities beginning March 13th by relocating from the XFL offices in Stamford, Connecticut to his home in Indiana and failing to devote substantially all of his business time to his XFL duties required by his contract, right? Oliver Luck actually ends up firing back, saying that he wasn't able to return to Connecticut due to Connecticut's stay-at-home order because of the coronavirus, but that he had actually been in contact with Vince McMahon via text message. And his attorneys actually listed out the projects that Oliver Luck was working on from home, including budgets for the 2021 season. The next thing that he was supposedly fired for, or not supposedly, that he was fired for, according to Vince McMahon, through his termination letter, was the signing of wide receiver Antonio Callaway without Vince McMahon's approval, and then refusing to release him once McMahon ordered him to do so, because of the fact that the XFL league policy stated that they did not want to sign players with problematic backgrounds. Most recently, Antonio Callaway had been suspended by the NFL for violating its substance abuse policy, and I believe it was just like weed or something like really minor like that. And Oliver Luck, to that, actually fired back, saying that, look, it did not violate the XFL policy as it was written, as the XFL's policy was written, and that he was actually responding to Vince McMahon's request to elevate wide receiver talent in the XFL. And finally, this is my favorite, and this one actually was not listed in the original termination letter, but personal use of an XFL-issued cell phone. And And now the phone is actually being forensically examined to determine the extent of Oliver Luck's personal use. And, it's just ridiculous, Oliver Luck is probably the most important thing to look at with all of this, right? Because he was the face of the XFL. And I believe that a lot of the coaches and a lot of the players were really not so much buying in, to the XFL in and of itself, but Oliver Luck. I mean, he's a stand-up guy. He is thought of with a very high opinion in the world of sports administration, certainly. I mean, you look at his resume, and he has just a laundry list of accolades as far as sports administration is concerned, along with, with his time in professional sports as an athlete when he was the quarterback of the Houston Oilers, right? So it was just a shame to see all of this go down. I'm interested to see what actually ends up happening as a result of all of this. But Oliver Luck, like I said, it was definitely one of, if not the single most important figure of the XFL. With the first incarnation of it, you saw Vince McMahon probably entirely too much. It was very gimmicky. But this time I thought it was really smart. He just kind of stepped back and he was more or less the money guy while he had people running the show for him, very competent football people such as Oliver Luck. Very respected guy, and obviously the father of Andrew Luck, who's like one of the all-time good guys in the NFL, right? So I think that it's definitely going to be interesting what happens as the end-all be-all of all of this. Now, like I said before, it does look like the XFL may not necessarily be dead just as of yet, and I've been telling people this for several weeks now. When the XFL filed bankruptcy, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That is not the same as Chapter 7 bankruptcy like the AAF did. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is liquidation of all of your assets, right? Where they're just completely closing up shop and the whole nine. Whereas Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and I'm sure I'm butchering the legal terms here just a little bit, but it is more or less redistribution of debt. So, and I told people that, I said, look, like, pay attention. I know the chances may be slim. On the surface level, it definitely looked like the XFL was doomed, but Chapter 11 bankruptcy is not the same as Chapter 7, like I said, which is liquidation of all assets. So now we're looking at it, and the XFL president, Jeffrey Pollack, actually ended up reaching out to both Seattle and St. Louis about renewing their leases there. Right? That's a little bit, I don't believe a whole lot in conspiracies and things of that nature, but that is one hell of a coincidence there, right? I mean, why would they why would they reach out about renewing their leases with those stadiums if there wasn't something going on behind the scenes? And now that there are rumors out stating that Vince McMahon himself may actually be the mystery buyer. He may be trying to purchase the XFL himself, right? Which is weird to me. I mean, I thought he was the owner, but then I got to looking at it a little bit more, and this is just me kind of spitballing. This is certainly not matter of fact or anything like that. This is just me kind of talking here. But I think it could be. I know that the XFL's parent company is Alpha Entertainment, which is owned by Vince McMahon. But I wonder if there is some type of maybe legal loophole if Vince McMahon were to purchase the XFL out of bankruptcy as a completely separate entity outside of Alpha Entertainment. So we'll have to see what happens with that. All of this just seems like really too big of a coincidence to me that the XFL president reaches out to Seattle and St. Louis. Oh, and that's another thing I forgot to mention. So apparently they actually reached out. I forget the name of the stadium, but more or less where the University of Houston, where their football team plays, they ended up reaching out to them to see if the lease agreement that they have and practice plans there at that stadium, if those things could be viewed as an asset if it was to be purchased out of bankruptcy. So you look at all these things, and it's just too much of a coincidence. I think it may not be dead after all. But what I do worry about a potential XFL 3.0 or 2.5, however you want to look at it, is what kind of staff are they going to bring back? Or are they going to just completely start from scratch, new staff, new commissioner, new coaches, everything? I worry about that, because it's definitely going to be hard to replace somebody like Oliver Luck. And obviously he's not coming back, right? So I wonder what type of person that they're going to bring back, or rather sign to replace him. And I wonder what people they would reach out to that would be willing to overlook the fact that, look, I think that they did Oliver Luck kind of dirty. And I know that one thing in the lawsuit that Oliver Luck kind of fired back at Vince McMahon with was the fact that in his contract with any discrepancies or anything like that, that he was supposed to have 30 days to correct it and clean it up, and he wasn't given that. He was fired. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of person they bring in that is willing to overlook the whole Oliver Luck situation and be willing to step in and, kind of take the reins from that. You've got to wonder if they would be worried about, what type of business Vince McMahon may be running in and how they can expect, what type of relationship they can expect with Vince McMahon if they decide to buy into this. And obviously coaches too. The same thing goes with coaches. I mean, I know they currently right now owe $1 million to Bob Stoops, the coach of the Dallas Renegades, former coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of coaches that they bring in as a result from all this. I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I said, I loved the XFL. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. I actually ended up going to the home opener in St. Louis. Right now I'm in San Diego with the Navy. And it was really an awesome experience. I mean, they had the dome, they were sold out, but the dome there in St. Louis, they actually only ended up selling about half of its capacity, or just shy of half of the dome's actual capacity. And that place was, just absolutely rabid, right? It was a really, really fun experience. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. I enjoyed the XFL. I loved all the new rule changes. The level of play was certainly not as bad as some people had thought it would have been. And look, I think that the XFL, like Oliver Luck ended up saying, they were not aiming to compete with the NFL, but rather to be a complement to the NFL. And I think it could be just that. I mean, look at all the XFL players that ended up actually getting contracts with the NFL as a result of their short time with the XFL, right? And I think it's an awesome opportunity, for college players. Look at Kenny Robinson, the St. Louis Battlehawks safety. He ended up leaving college and playing in the XFL. I think it wasn't that he just left college solely to play for the XFL. I think there were some academic issues there. But it just goes to show you what a great opportunity it could be for college players who are not currently getting paid right now, to play college ball. It's a great opportunity for them to continue to get national exposure, again, assuming that the XFL is able to re-up their partnerships with the television stations that they had. But it's an awesome opportunity for them, to get national exposure against fringe NFL level talent, right? Some guys, former NFL players. It's an awesome opportunity for them. So I think that the XFL could definitely be a great farm system for the NFL. And, just something fun to watch during the NFL offseason. I mean, I love watching football. My wife, God love her, she can't stand it anymore because of me. She likes football, but I think I kind of burned her out on it. But, for people like me that do like watching football, it's great, to have something outside of the NFL after the Super Bowl is over and to see, potential talent that wouldn't have otherwise gotten an opportunity, right? Because, look at all the guys that are not currently on practice squads that could potentially be a really great asset. You look at C.J. Anderson, right, who most recently played with the Detroit Lions and had a pretty rough time there, didn't have much success at all. But look what he did. Look what he did with the Broncos. Look what he did with the Rams. So imagine having an opportunity like the XFL to, get some more game tape and have, potential coaches and GMs in the NFL be like, what? This guy may actually have some juice left in the tank. So I don't know. Obviously, this is all up for grabs. It's anybody's guess at this point as to what the end result is going to be. The potential fallout from the lawsuit with Oliver Luck and Vince McMahon, along with this potential buying of the XFL by Vince McMahon himself. Let me know what you guys think. Post a comment below. What do you guys think? What's going to happen? Are they going to bring back any of the coaches of the XFL? Is it going to be completely revamped? What is XFL 2.5, if you will, going to look like? That's all for now. I'm signing out. You guys take it easy.